Yeah, what they were telling us to do was transforming our lives. In basically, I'll just say it, basically they were teaching us how to love ourselves, how to take care of ourselves, how to honor ourselves, how to resolve our own conflicts, how to articulate ourselves, how to be inspired and inspiring, and ending with what does it mean to be compassionate. So that was what we were learning, and it was having profound effects on all our relationships and our opportunities and clearing up conflicts within. All that was creating more synchronicity. So it was a grand experiment that we were in.
Embark on a captivating journey into the intriguing world of human consciousness with Douglas James Cottrell, PhD. Douglas and our diverse range of guests delve deep into the mind, illuminating our limitless potential. Engage in profound dialogues that pave the way for personal growth and uncover the hidden power of your consciousness. Your journey towards personal growth continues here. Now, here is Douglas.
Well, welcome to the program again, my friends. I have a wonderful guest today who's going to tell us all about what it's like to talk to Albert Einstein and other famous people. I'm joined with Barbara With today, who is a medium extraordinaire, and she has been practicing her abilities, her work for a long time, so she has great experience. And again, we're all curious about that question. Is there life after death? Well, I certainly believe so. I think anybody that is convinced they have a soul would also believe that. But today we're going to get some evidence about that. So I'm going to say, welcome to the show, Barbara. It's great to have you here today. Tell us about yourself. It's great to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you, Douglas. It's so great to be here. I love, love, love having these kinds of conversations, and everybody wants to have them more and more right now. So my intuitive gift started with music when I was very young. Had a kind of supernatural ability to climb up on the piano and figure out how to play the piano. And then by 12, I was writing songs, these kind of goth folk songs. This is the 70s, 60s, 70s. And to me, that was later on, I figured out that's channeling. I would go into some space where like outer space, and listen. And I would hear the songs already written, and I would listen for them and remember them and bring them back. So how I transitioned from that to knowing that I talked to Albert Einstein is kind of an epic lifetime journey that I'd like to try to condense down into a short time, but bear with me if it gets a little convoluted. There's so many moving parts to it.
Well, everybody wants to know, Barbara, so take your time. Like,
oh, okay.
How do you do this? How do you know you're talking to the good spirits versus the not so good ones? Tell us all about it. We're eager to learn.
Okay, so I was this extraordinary young songwriter, and during high school, I ended up going to see my friend Mike had a mom named Eunice who gave readings, air quotes. We didn't call her a channeler. He just said, come and see what my mom can do. So here was his beautiful Buddha-like mother who sat before this picture of Jesus and lit a candle and said, just kind of went out of her, and her voice changed. And she said the most amazing, divine, insightful, inspiring things about me and the music and where I was going with it and what it was meant and the healing power of the music. And so I had an experience of going to see a psychic when I was young, but she didn't talk to anybody. She just said she was an antenna, and she would go into outer space and she would listen for my higher power, what I wanted to ultimately tell myself. So that's how I grew up knowing it.
Well, that's interesting. So she kind of told you the question before you asked it, because your high self was sort of giving her the nudge or some indication. Wow. How old were you when that was going on?
I think my first reading, I was probably 16. And I'd been writing music for 3 or 4 years in response to, I must say, a very hellish childhood. I had a lot of abuse and dissociation and all of that ugly. There was no place in my family where there was. But in any case, I was taking it out in these songs that I was writing, and she was able to give me some. I mean, I'm 16, my father's long gone, my mother's working 60 hours a week and an alcoholic anyway. So she's
Oh
giving
my
me some
gosh.
spiritual um, guidance that I could, figure out for myself. I didn't go to church and I didn't really have a family per se that I could spiritually be safe with. So it was, self-learning as you go.
So
And any
did you feel
Go ahead.
alienated, or did you feel like on your own, like sort of like alone in a crowd kind of thing? I mean,
Oh, yeah, I was the baby of four, and my mother and father fought from the moment long before I was born viciously at each other, and he was sexually abusive and emotionally abusive, and they were both alcoholics, and she was a speed freak in the 50s, diet pills. And we all picked up just terrible, horrible self-images and being subjected to that much screaming and yelling and people just fighting to the bitter end, everybody getting as ugly as they can.
pretty
So that
toxic,
was,
pretty toxic
yeah.
family environment. So I've heard other musicians like Johnny Cash who said that he heard in his dream one of his songs where the trumpets were playing, you know, and so he wrote the song and he hired three musicians to come in and play the trumpet. And they said, what should we do? And he said, well, you'll figure it out. Just listen to the song. And so they went over. And I'm sorry, I can't remember the title of that song, that it was very famous and very popular, but it had the trumpets in the background. And basically, it was from his dream or something he, I think, in a way similar to what you do, channeled that information. So as you're as writing songs and you're getting information from the ethers, when was that first time you made the leap, if I can call it that, to getting in contact with I like to call them ghost people, deceased
Brian,
people.
I hate.
That's my term for it. But can you remember how that happened the first time, or how you got, was it a surprise, or was it something you willfully attempted to do?
Well, as far as becoming a channel like Eunice was, I did that before the ghost people. I started automatic writing spontaneously and knew what it was, but obviously, but when I asked them who they were, they just said sound.
So you're pulling in information from the ethers, if I can call it that, or from beyond your own intellect. And you did that for a long time, I guess. And was it become like a daily practice, or it was natural for you?
Well, I started giving readings all those many years ago. And
Really?
in,
Wow.
1987, I started giving readings. And people came, it was all referral. I gave a couple people readings and said, hey, if, refer people. People would come maybe twice a year. And nobody ever really talked much about what was said actually in the reading. And I don't really remember people's readings in that way. Uh, but in 1993, I wanted to do a group channel because I was really into Edgar Casey and Jane Roberts, both channels in their own nature. And I wanted to know what these voices of we, because when I would channel, it would be we, would say to a bunch of people. And I couldn't find anybody within my circle that I was already working with. But then started to come these women. First came Teresa, and then she sent Janine, and then she sent, and so there were like 5 or 6 referral women who had come for private readings. And then they sent Kim. And when Kim came, my energy level of the reading was significantly through the roof. I was like talking a mile a minute and blah, 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 blah. And Kim took her reading went home, transcribed it, and then called me to ask me to talk about what did it mean? What does this mean? What does that mean? And this is the first time anybody had ever done such a thing. And I was fascinated. Well, I don't know. Let's talk about it. So they were the first group reading that I did in December of 1993. We call ourselves the Psychic Sorority.
Uh-huh.
And we started meeting on a regular basis. And I would channel for the group. We would record them, transcribe them, and make those transcripts available to whoever we had called in that day or who was ever there to be a part of this information. And so that December 1993 transcript is the first time I'd ever really listened to what the information that was coming out of me. What is this? What is this really all about? And it rapidly turned into something I had no idea what what. And so they told us right from the beginning, you're on a mission, and we have a revolutionary way to resolve conflict that we need to test on you, because for world peace, we call it world peace, one person at a time, starting with self, as a antidote for world peace. And we need some humans to test this revolutionary way to resolve conflict with on real conflicts. And
So,
when Kim and Teresa asked, "Who are you?" in a reading, they said, "You can call us angels."
wow. So if
So
you have this sorority or this group of invisible friends, if I could say that, just for people listening to this who might not might be kind of wondering what is she talking about, kind of thing, because a lot of people this is very foreign to them, and the idea about talking to deceased people, there's always a fear that you're being misguided by the dark side or the negative side. But it seems to me you went through a transition of uh, being somewhat outside your family and in a troubled home, which a lot of the people I've interviewed have had difficulties, experiences on their own and been very poor, slept in cars, had trauma in their early life. But it seems to be a consistent. I don't know if that's the case for everybody, but there seems to be a lot of this inward looking sort of this sense of as a child wondering about justice, and this isn't the way it's supposed to be. But you went through this evolution of reaching out and automatic writing, which, again, for people to explain that, it's kind of getting information in your hand does the writing, and you don't think about the words, so to speak, and then you read it later what you wrote, if that's what
yes,
you're.
exactly.
That's my understanding of it. I don't do it myself, so. But anyway, you were expert at that, and then surprise, you do this group reading, and everybody's absolutely amazed at the information you're getting, and then you have to read it back yourself to find out what you said. Well, that's astounding as far as the average person would say. So as you're doing this, obviously there's a group of people interested in what you're saying. It's meaningful. They're coming back for more research. And then you have this mission to go on of world peace, starting with one person at a time, which I love. I think that's just an amazing uh, initiation, if you will, of people doing this. How did you make the transition to talking to some of the famous people? And did they have the same intention of speaking, if you will, through you to get a message like Albert Einstein? How did that happen?
Well, the three of us, Kim and Teresa and I, published our diaries about that time, about our first initial time together. We published them in 1997, Diaries of a Psychic Sorority. And at that time, I had an agent, a literary agent, and a tabloid in London reached out to her, a paranormal, sort of metaphysical tabloid, who was looking for an interview with Princess Diana from beyond the grave on the 1 year anniversary of her death. And you asked me, how did I get from an antenna? Well, then we went to angels, which we could talk about in a second. My skepticism, even of what does that mean? How do we know any of this? But to speak to people who had passed on, that started happening to me. A friend of mine, my first friend who ever died, and there was a significant shift in my ability to communicate. But these were like friends who had passed on, or Kim's mother who had passed, not like me pretending I could go to some famous person and talk and interview them. That sounded a little gratuitous almost to me, and kind of not what I was about, like cheap seeking. But I thought about it and thought about it, and I thought, well, what will it hurt to try? I have a big imagination, and so I'll just do it. So I sat down, and in automatic writing, what you sort of do is you get out of your head a bit. You just get out of the way. What I do is I make my ego voice, da da da. I imagine it really tiny, and it's sitting in a little chair. So there's all this room. And then I just imagine, and I let whatever comes through me, because at this point you can't be wrong about it. You're not gonna, it's not something that I think would overtake you if some demon came in. It's not like that at all. It's more like imagination, trusting your imagination. So I imagined I was talking to her. I apparently was channeling the questions and the answers, and I typed them. Then I printed it and I went to read it. And that was when I started to get this feeling that there was something more here, because it was very profound and had some very detailed information. But what's most profound is that her whole message is about peace. That if all the 40 million people who put flowers on her grave would make peace, that we could get to world peace. And because of that, the tabloid didn't really want it. They wanted to know about Charles and Camilla.
Well,
You know, they were looking.
they wanted that dirt on the couple, and the rumors, and that, like that mouth-watering details about the intimacies between the royal family members and the whatever, Camilla and her friend, etc. I could see that. That would be exciting, but that's not what you're all about.
Yeah.
It's,
And
that gives it sort of a tone of being genuine, so to speak.
well,
So
and Diana would never, it took me all this time. I did that interview in 1998. It took me till this year to realize she never would have said anything about them. Anyway, that's who she was. She would not have, mentioned them in her space, because she was, and wouldn't go there. And I love that. I love that about her. But um
so
well,
give
so he
give
go
us
ahead.
some gumdrop of some detail, though. We're all waiting for you to come up with some secret. So, in lieu of that, what was it that she said about peace? I mean, encouraging people to have world peace and putting that energy of remorse and grief in a positive way forward to help people. What would she actually have said that you could tell our audience?
About peace.
Yes,
Oh, well, after she told us in great detail what she and Dodie were at odds about in their relationship, which is also very intriguing. Um,
that's the point I'd like you to elaborate on. Everybody wants to know about that. But
well,
anyway,
what she said was they kind of had this argument because she did not want to be worshipped. She did not want to be worshipped. And he was an Arab man who has had a culture behind him, as well as he worshipped her.
ah,
And so she said, when we were out to dinner that night, we were having this kind of playful conversation, but it was all about how I don't want to be worshipped.
wow, does
And
that ever make sense? Wow.
I know. And I could relate to it. Not that, people rush all over the world to worship me, but I've been in dynamics of situations where somebody has a little bit of worshipy thing going on, and you don't want it anyway. But of course, Diana, of course she would not want to be worshipped, her in where she was at that time. And she made some predictions about the boys, that they weren't, there wasn't a great deal of brain surgery in them, but she just talked about their natures, and how Harry, it's Harry and William, right? Is that it? I can't remember. Harry
Harry,
and
Yeah.
Um, that the younger one was going to be much more like her, much more emotionally, and the older one was going to follow in, Charles is more like in Charles's way, but they were going to make this kind of switch when they got older, and you'd see them going and doing a lot of work for the world. So there's a lot of stuff that I can't remember right off the top of my head, but it was really profound to read all that and think that maybe this was really, but but why not see, maybe there's more. My agent and I decided to see if there were more famous dead people who wanted to talk to me.
And that's
And
how you got to Albert Einstein.
well, we made a list, and oddly enough, he wasn't on the first list. We
Yeah,
made this list.
I would
I
say,
know.
Barbara, who would there who let's say ordinary people, who would think, let's see, Albert Einstein, let's channel him. No, I'd be thinking Marilyn Monroe, I'd be, some, you know, other world famous people, maybe Henry B.
Gandhi.
Yeah, So, well, how did that happen? How did Albert show up?
Well, now remember, by this time, this is 1998. We had been, the three of us in the Psychic Sorority had been giving these step-by-step instructions for world peace, one person at a time, this revolutionary way to resolve conflict first within the self as a way to get to global peace. You don't go right at global peace. You have to go first in right here. And so we had this process, and we were trained by these angels
Aha.
to do this, and we did it. We had fights, the three of us, and we would get the transcripts, and we would piece our way. It's like building a nest almost. It's like you have to just, what does this mean, and how does this mean? We had to test it when we were actually fighting, and so it was really a monumental effort on the three of our parts to take these angels seriously. But the point was, and this gets to what people say, well, how do you know it wasn't, bad angels? Or
They were being
what they were
deceived or
telling,
something. Sure.
yeah, what they were telling us to do was transforming our lives. In basically, I'll just say it, basically they were teaching us how to love ourselves, how to take care of ourselves, how to honor ourselves, how to resolve our own conflicts, how to articulate ourselves, how to be inspired and inspiring, and ending with what does it mean to be compassionate. So that was what we were learning, and it was having profound effects on all our relationships and our opportunities, and clearing up conflicts within. All that was creating more synchronicity. So it was a grand experiment that we were in. So when we were asking who might be next in this to step up to talk, Elvis, or who, second was Nicole Brown Simpson.
Really?
And
That's interesting.
we asked Gandhi and Mother Teresa and probably Elvis before we got to Nicole Brown Simpson. But when she stepped up, that was also a very profound conversation, because it dispelled this idea that you just die and suddenly you're just in this happy place no matter what. She's
Okay.
like, oh no, not when you get murdered by your husband and you see your children left behind with him.
Okay. Hold it right there. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back.
Okay.
Did you know that Dr. Douglas Cottrell has several other weekly channels where you can participate? Check out his Sunday International Spiritual Healing Service on Zoom. And you might also enjoy the Wake Up podcast exploring human consciousness, awareness, and intuition with Dr. Douglas and co-host Les Hubert. Just go to douglasjamescottrell.com and message us on the contact page to add your name to the Zoom links of your choice.
So just before the break, you were talking about Nicole Simpson, and she was conveying to you what it was like after she had passed over and was watching her family, or let's say the fallout from that. So what did she say? How did she convey that to you, how she felt?
Well, I think to sum it up, her point was that forgiveness is the test, and that was her test right now, because she was still in a place where she was in that courtroom every day. She was all around her kids. She was not going to let go, and she had her own turbulent emotional body in her hologram, however you want to say it, that had her totally connected. And so she was really articulate about outlining how he grew up, what influences created what dynamic, what's kind of socio-cultural racial dynamic within him as a Black man in a white world, etc. And then about abuse, about how domestic abuse, kind of the dynamic of what went on with them.
So she was
And
understanding and forgiving him, so to speak. I mean,
she was
yeah,
working on it.
okay. Well, yeah, working on it is probably a good term, a work in progress. I know it's interesting you say she was around watching all this in the courtroom and things like that. So that bespeaks the question about the people when they pass over, they can hang around, like sort of be earthbound. They don't necessarily go to heaven or some other place.
Well, and later on, we can get a touch on how Einstein maps out in his unified field theories why there's really nowhere to go.
Okay, well,
It,
let's do that now because that sounds like the answer. What
oh,
did you say about that?
well, when he got when I was decided in 2005, it was the 100-year anniversary of E equals MC squared. And I wanted to do just a book for Einstein. So I channeled a bunch of sessions and then I set about to edit, imagining he was here guiding my editing. And so that time is where he was bringing forth his unified field theory, which he never did when he was alive, that includes these maps of human consciousness that explain not only how matter is manifest, but our relationship consciously to it. So, and the basic premise is that the beginning of all life begins in the center of the earth, and with a compilation of consciousness. So you have one, I have one. It's a compilation of all of the mathematics that make up everything that's here. And from that compilation, there's a gravitational wave that flows. It's my wave, you have your wave. And on that wave, it's flowing up literally through the planet to the surface of the planet. And when it gets to the surface and it gets to the outside, there's the inner and the outer, that's where the lens is created. That's where we are sitting here separate. The computer is now separate from me, but it's all originating on this wave that's coming up through, separating out. And the wave continues on out into the heavens until it reaches the Earth's electromagnetic field. And it goes back up through the North Pole, back down into the center of the planet, which Einstein says serves like a black hole. It operates like a black hole. And then it spins again, and it spins at the speed of light squared. And what slows it all down and separates it all out is this thing they call the human intention. So it's like a mechanism. It's like a prism. Here's the spinning string. It's got all your mathematics. So there's the mathematics of your DNA in your body, and there's like a hologram. You can't see in that dark energy, but you can see the gravitational waves in that spinning string. But when the human intention comes out of the source, out into the heavens to the observer, and then the lens, almost like a prism, lowers down over the spinning string, and it creates that lens that we're sitting in, and everything separates out through our bodies, because our body is the projector and the perceiver of the world.
Uh-huh.
So when we lose our bodies and go to be ghost people, all of that mathematics, that spins on forever. That hologram of who we'd been, and it's literally in that space. So we're not going any, there's like, we're of a different frequency and light matter or antimatter, whichever you call it. But there's really not anywhere that we go. And when Einstein wants to talk through me, he rides that wave up. I give him permission to be a part of my body that's coagulating, and we share uh, thoughts, feelings, and senses, and he speaks, and or whomever.
Well, does he talk to you often, or is this, every once in a while, or does he volunteer to show up? I'm sure he's pretty busy over there and lots to do on the other side, with keeping the world together.
Right, there's a lot to do on the other side, and that's what he is doing. Well, I have to tell you though, going back to Nicole Brown Simpson and
Ah, yeah.
these people who wanted to talk. By the time we did John F. Kennedy, and that also has been now what he says, what had now been proven about what really happened to him. But it was him who said, "Now we're going to tell you from here on in who is coming because we've been writing this book and we want these interviews to go in this book and we'll tell you who's coming next." It's like, okay. And then it was Einstein.
Wow.
And when I sat down and opened myself up and got out of the way, that energy was long familiar. It was not just the voice that had been coming through me in my private readings that I was doing when I was just an antenna. It was something so far back in the music, because Einstein too was a musician. In fact, he probably would have preferred to have been a musician than a scientist in his last life. So I felt really like that's when I decided I had to do just a book for him. But they also sent Sigmund Freud. And I had no idea about these people. I mean, I knew who he was basically, but I couldn't have told you much about his life or did he know Einstein or
So you get to know these personalities, if I can call them that, after they've signed up to participate in your research. Uh, have some of the things you've said, actually you've told about John F. Kennedy, some of the things that happened that were told to you and then they were verified later in the news and whatnot. Are there things like that that happen with Einstein and some of these other personalities?
oh my gosh. I learned just recently that so there's Freud. This is a book that became party of 12, the afterlife interviews, and
Okay.
it was Freud, Einstein, Hitler, Anwar Sadat,
Holy moly.
and their whole point of this book was they ended with a manifesto to the destiny of world peace. So they stayed and they signed, we're going to do this until life after life, but it's a destiny that we're going to create this world where that's based on compassion that we're meant to really learn how to do. So their whole commission is world peace.
Well, that's really interesting. You had some light beings bringing intellectual things into the world like Einstein and the revelations like uh, Mrs. Brown, if you will, Nicole, to Diana, who, had some world influence while she was walking the earth and now is joined up with a group of like-minded ghost people, and it seems like they're reaching back, trying to help us. Like uh, I like that idea. In this day and age, we now are going through a time of great difficulty in the Middle East and in Europe with Ukraine and Russia. Uh, so these people coming into the world in the past through you, sort of impassioned about talking about world peace and what to do about it. You think they were trying to prepare us for now?
Well, most definitely. And also remember that these people, when they were alive, were working on this. In 1932, the League of Nations had a special committee called the Intellectual Cooperation Committee to try to bring together the nations of the world that were torn apart by World War One. And one of the ways they were going to do it was to stimulate public conversation by thought leaders such as Einstein and published them, because this is 1932, right? There's no internet, etc. So they asked Einstein, and he said, yes, I want to write to Sigmund Freud. So they published this series of letters back and forth, and his question was, how do we end war? And Freud said, maybe we have one world government. And very quickly they talked about it and thought, no, that's not a good idea, because it's easier to denature plutonium than it is to get evil out of men. And so Freud didn't really know what to say, but he said, I'm giving you some 3 informal ideas. So the first way to end war is to nurture really hungry, open minds that are seeking for the truth. The second thing is to build community where you know each other and you're connected. And the third was to tell people the truth about how horrible war is, and let them understand and be moved that they have to stand up to say no to it because it's so awful. So in 1955, Einstein, his last paper that he was working on, they read it after he died. It was called the Russell-Einstein Manifesto. And he did just that. He urged community or nations to settle their differences peacefully and to create community amongst the world. But he also warned exactly what would happen if we went to World War III. And this was before what we have now. This was just after the bombs in Hiroshima, but they were speculating in the Russell-Einstein Manifesto that if there's a war waged with the bombs, the hydrogen bombs that are coming out now, you might think that, oh yeah, Moscow will get bombed and that won't hurt us. No, those people get to go first, and then we get to suffer the long, slow death of watching our grandchildren be poisoned by the air and the food and die these deaths. So he really did take it seriously what Freud had said to him. So getting back though, those are the sorts of things that I've unfolded through the years that have given me the evidentiary pieces of it that make me go, yeah, everything's a mystery at its root, but I believe that this is the ghosts of these people who in real life were attached to the idea of peace and went into the afterlife with the intention. And who else but Einstein would go, his 2 big things, the unified field theory and world peace, he took with him into afterlife, figured it out, found out the answer, made his unified field theory, and then found a way to get it back to humans. I mean, that's Einsteinian as far as I'm concerned.
I find it amazing. What's in my mind is Knights of the Round Table, Camelot, everybody coming together for the greater good. And these people in some place beyond the earth are holding meetings, conversations, debates. Freud and Einstein, my gosh. So did they ever tell you what it's like over there? Did they ever describe the environment?
Well, Einstein, in my first tribute to him, Imagining Einstein, Essays on M-Theory, World Peace, and the Science of Compassion, he tries in the beginning to describe what it was like when he died. And he said what I've heard over and over again since then was that it was like more than getting shot out of a cannon, that you just accelerate. When you lose matter, you gain, when you lose mass, you gain speed. And so, but
That makes sense.
so, yeah, and it's mathematical if you turn the math around to it.
Less weight, more speed,
And if you slow down the energy, then you get mass. So, and don't ask me, I'm not a mathematician or a scientist. I just always wanted to be a rock star myself. But anyway, that's what he says. So it's what he says is that we interface in the non-physical. So you and I and everybody sitting here with bodies, we have, it's called our bigger operating system, that's in the non-physical part of reality. And there is a non-physical part. There's this physical part, and then there's outside the lens. And so we share that energy whether we have a body or not. Most of us don't remember in the course of a day what our non-physical is doing, but it's there. And when we die, I think that's why it feels like coming home. It's not like, oh, I have to leave. It's like, oh, there's this part of me that's been here all the time and I just never even knew it. So and then a lot with imagination and intention of what they experience.
Well, listen, Barbara, how could people get a hold of you? They keep in contact with you. Maybe you're going to do a session for them, or they could buy your book again. What's your website, and how could people get a hold of you?
Well, I've got several websites. So Barbara with BARBARBARAWITH .com. That's where you can book a reading or read about that. I also have synergyalliance.llc, synergyalliance.llc, and that's everything. That's Einstein, that's all the Psychic Sorority, that's all the events. I've got some live in-person events coming up, and they're all listed there too. And I'm currently on a world tour. I'm calling for the participation of the willing to take part in a worldwide nonviolent action to end the age of war. And
Wow.
it's basically about us first going inside ourselves and finding where what little wars we have going on that are contributing, and taking care of it here right now, and contributing to world peace in other ways. So
Well, that's a very noble mission. So, can you want to tell us where you're going to be in the next little while? We're in October here, 2023. Any states,
oh,
countries coming?
yes, I'm in November 1st, I'm in Minneapolis, and November 26th, I'm also in Minneapolis at Lake Superior uh, Spiritual Community in South Minneapolis. On the 1st, I'm having a Night of the Day of the Dead channel at
Wow.
my friend's um, art bar. And then I am going to be down in Austin, Texas on November 10th and 11th doing Einstein Channel, and then presenting all the unified fields and the maps of human consciousness, and walking us all through conflict revolution, which is really a miraculous process. I wish everyone would do, but then I'm off to Georgia. And then in December, I leave for Oslo, Norway for 2 months, where I'm going to be base camping, I guess. So I've got some UK stuff going on. I've been invited to Romania and Denmark, and I was invited to Tel Aviv, but we'll see.
Uh,
Whew,
don't,
we'll see how
don't
that
go there,
goes.
Barbara. Don't go there.
No, I don't think that anybody's going there
You can have
right
all the
now.
protection you like of all the angels
No,
above, but don't go there for
no,
time. You know.
that's my protection is no, I'm not
So,
going there.
so as we get near the end of this wonderful interview, uh, people are sitting here listening to you. They're thinking in their own mind. They're, going back and forth about life after death. And some people might want to do what you do. So, any advice or direction about people who may want to become a medium or get in touch with their relatives? You know, as you have said, and I believe as well that we just change. It's like wearing out a pair of shoes. We discard them and we go back to the post existence, which is where we came from in the first place, and then we get a new pair of shoes and get to come over and do it all over again. But uh, any advice or direction about people who are sitting here now wondering, either for the first time, that maybe there is life after death, or more exactly, I want to know how, if Barbara can do this, I can do this. Do I have to do automatic writing first? Uh, what direction or advice would you have for people who are seriously interested in doing this? And are there any things to watch out for?
Well, I would say that first of all, know that this is innate in all of us, that we all have the capacity to be in touch with a far more intuitive, non-physical side of us. So it's not unique to me. And that at the root of everything, this is my advice after all these years now. I started in 1987 and I'm old now. So, is that if you're really serious about it, then you need to go and test yourself. What I used to do was I would take Eunice's readings and I would write down what I thought was going to happen, what I anticipated it meant that was going to happen. And then I would watch and see what really happened. And then I would see, I would learn that way very, very, and now it's not about predicting the future. It's about being in touch with your own intuitive self, say a prayer of protection, and know that it's afterlife and spiritual life is not a lot different than physical life in terms of there's people on the streets who can hurt you. There's probably demons that can hurt. I've never had them. When I have people who are being plagued by them, we work conflict resolution back down into the self to find out what's conflicted in the self that's attracting those things. So those will be your tests, though. You have to be willing to be tested and to admit at the end of the day, it's all a mystery. It took me this long, Douglas. I mean, I'm talking about sound to antenna to angels to famous dead people to Albert Einstein. It's maddening. It can be maddening. And so you have to really take time, be skeptical, but open, and use your imagination, and then ask to be guided and get out of your head and listen for what your intuition is going to impel you to do and take those steps and figure out what all that means. There's certainly a plethora of information and guidance, and everywhere there's spiritual awakening information and help, and I can help too. We do a free online conflict resolution classes on Zoom on a regular basis, and offering to the world what I think we need to do to help us get through this.
Okay, let's take another quick short break. We'll be right back with more.
The Douglas James Cottrell website is where you can learn much more about this amazing man and his journey through a lifetime of spiritual prophecy. The book Secrets of Life answers questions everyone has about the physical versus the spiritual world, why you are here in the world right now, karma, psychic abilities, reincarnation, prayer, and much more about universal laws. This book is essential for those who really desire to follow the path of the divine to soul perfection. Douglas has been chosen to provide you with a keen insight into the purpose of life's journey. Best-selling author Robert Appel says, "The least you can expect from Dr. Cottrell's work is that it will change your life." Go to douglasjamescottrell.com and click on Shop for Secrets of Life and all of his books and learning materials.
Well, here we are at the end of this amazing interview. We got a few minutes left in the show. Barbara, as we said before, people might want to, go down the same path that you're on. I'm sure that there are people, this is not what they should do. And I am sure just as well that there are people that could be, have some synergy with this and they could do it. And they need a mentor, I believe, and they could contact you for mentoring or to find out what you do or to have a reading. And I think that's a good place to start. As people go through this process, it's summary of what you've been through. And as you, just before the break had said, you started off with something, went to something else, something bigger, and something bigger. So it developed. And as you said earlier, you didn't think of Albert and the other famous people when you started out. You were doing earnest research and attempting to find out if his mediumship really was what it was, and it is, of course. So I'm saying that as a cautionary note to people: go slow. My mentor, Reverend Alex Holm, told me the same thing a long time ago: go slow. And I was delighted to hear you saying the same thing. So as we conclude the interview, how can people get a hold of you again, and where are your books available? And tell us all about that as we go to the end.
Yes, barbarawith.com is where you can go to book a reading with me. And synergyalliance.llc will take you to everything else, all my events, my online classes, all of our books. Our books are also on amazon.com, and you can find events on Synergy Alliance. And if you're just interested at all in my music, I have a whole music website at Barbwith, Barbwith. And so there's some videos, music videos, and music over there too. So that's where I am.
A smorgasbord of things to examine, learn, see. Thank you for mentioning about your music website. That's amazing. You're a busy lady, obviously.
I've been, oh, and also YouTube, Barb
And you,
with. I have a lot of, I bought about 200 videos up there of everything, different channeling sessions and the Psychic Sorority videos. And
okay, all under your name, Barbara With,
yes.
With, right?
Hmm.
I spelled that right? Okay.
Yes, you did.
Okay, well, listen, it's been delightful having this opportunity to have you on our Zoom YouTube program. Also, I remind people that Barbara was interviewed on the Global Village radio show, the Global Village International radio show, and also I believe the audio of that radio show is posted on my podcast, The Wake Up. I'm your host, Douglas James Cottrell. It's been a wonderful interview listening to Barbara Witt today. Remember, the journey doesn't stop here. It continues on. So we encourage you to continue taking your steps. We're all on the same path individually, together. Until next time, I wish you peace and prosperity. God bless.
Here on the program, Douglas speaks with fascinating guests who share their experiences and insights. We post new videos frequently, so be sure to check back often to see who's being featured next. For more information about Douglas and the guests, check out the links in the description below. And please make sure to subscribe by hitting the subscribe button so you won't miss a single episode. It also helps boost the signal and spread the word about the show. And feel free to add your comments below. Your feedback, comments, and suggestions are what help us. And thanks for visiting.